I am Hannah Zadik, Country Director for Kenya. You're about to participate in a discussion about the role of technology in empowering youth with disabilities. Technology can level the playing field by providing equal opportunities for everyone, yet for millions, barriers to accessibility limit its full potential. Accessible technology designed to be usable by everyone, including people with disabilities, breaks down these barriers and opens doors to opportunities that were once out of reach. In the financial realm, accessible mobile banking apps, screen reader compatible platforms, and voice-activated assistants empower individuals to manage their finances independently. These tools ensure that everyone, regardless of ability, can participate in the economy, save for the future, and access essential services. This gives so many people a sense of dignity denied to them for far too long. In the workplace, inclusive technology like speech-to-text software, adaptive keyboards, and accessible communication platforms enable people with disabilities to contribute their talents and skills effectively. These technologies drive innovation and growth, benefiting society. In education, accessible technology is transformative. Screen readers, audiobooks, closed captions, and assistive learning devices allow students with disabilities to engage fully with curricula. This ensures equitable access to knowledge and fosters a culture where every learner can excel. But technology alone is not enough. It must be paired with awareness, advocacy, and investment. It also needs collective action. Governments, businesses, and educators must prioritize accessibility in design and implementation, ensuring that no one is left behind. Accessible technology is not just a tool, it's a pathway to empowerment and inclusion. We must advocate for designs that are inclusive, push for policies that ensure accessibility, and invest in solutions that enable every young person, regardless of ability, to thrive. Together, we can ensure it becomes a cornerstone of a fairer, more inclusive society. As we embark on this important discussion about the role of technology in empowering youth with disabilities, let us remember that every innovation is an opportunity to break down barriers and create a more inclusive world. The time to act is now, and together we can empower the next generation of leaders to shape an inclusive future.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olushola Owonikoko, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's panel session, where we are discussing an incredibly significant and forward-looking topic, the role of technology in empowering youths with disabilities. This conversation is part of the MasterCard Foundation's ongoing commitment to fostering inclusive growth and creating pathways for all young people to access opportunities regardless of their abilities. We all know that technology has the power to break barriers, open doors, and leverage and level the playing field, especially for youths with disabilities. For this group of people, it is not just a tool, it is a bridge to education, employment, social connection, and self-expression. To even take it further, assistive technology becomes extremely important in accessing mainstream technology. And today we are honored to have 4 talented young people with disabilities joining us to drive this conversation. We have 4 of them. Miriam joining us from Kenya. We also have Sarah from Ghana. There's Chrissy from Malawi. And we have Joy from Kenya. These individuals, they bring not only their lived experience to this conversation, but their key insights. And we are all happy to listen to them. Just to quickly describe myself for our participants, who are persons with visual impairment. I am dark-skinned. I wear a short afro. I'm putting on a green Nigerian-made kaftan, brown sneakers. I'm about 6'3", between 6'3" and 6'4" tall. I get that confused sometimes, but somewhere between. But anyways, that is me. We are going to go right now to meet our participants, our talented panelists. I'm going to start with Miriam to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Emomeri. and I have a speech disability. I work at United Disabled Persons of Kenya as a communications officer, and also I work as a platform manager at Enable Me Kenya, and also I am an innovator at Skill.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Marianne, for joining us in today's conversation. Sarah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Kekeli Akuno, and I'm a student of the University of Ghana. I'm the Vice President for Campus Association of Students with Special Needs on University of Ghana campus. I'm also the Vice President for Ghana Blind Union Accra Youth Wing, a member of Ghana Blind Union, and also a member of the Ghana Federation of Persons with Disability. I would quickly describe myself for my visually impaired participants. So I'm wearing a hot pink blazer with a white inner and a lighter shade of pink trousers. And I have on Afro twist braids, and I am wearing my heels. They are short heels, but they give me confidence and makes me feel like, yes, like I can take on the world. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Great. By being here, you're taking on the world. Thank you so much for joining us. So over to you, Joyce.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joyce Mugure. I am a woman with psychosocial disabilities. I am brown-skinned, slightly above 5 feet, medium weight, and today I'm dressed in a white shirt with blue strips and khaki pants and black, I just realized now I should call them short heels, short black heels. And yes, they also make me feel confident. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And over to you, Chrissy.
Thank you so much, Olushola. So, hi everyone. I'm happy to be here. My name is Chrissy Zimba, and I'm from Malawi. I work with an organization called the Disability Rights Fund, and I'm a program officer for Malawi. I'm also a member of Spinal Injuries Association of Malawi. I'm also an advocate for equal employment opportunities for young persons with disabilities who have employability skills. And I would like to describe myself for the colleagues that are visually impaired. So I'm a woman with a disability. I use a wheelchair due to a spinal injury which I had when I was around 11 years old. My wheelchair is kind of purplish in color, and I'm wearing a cream waistcoat with a white long-sleeved bodysuit, and I'm also wearing a skirt which has some cream flowers and black flowers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for introducing yourselves. So let's get into the conversation. Today we're talking about technology, especially as it concerns how young people with disabilities use, engage technologies to leverage opportunities. Starting with you, Marianne, what has been your experience with technology, using technology for yourself and for young people around you?
First of all, I want to apologize. I forgot to explain myself to the people who are with visual impairments. I'm having brown braids, and I have a green bluish dress and black shoes. So allow me to use my text-to-speech app to answer your questions. Thank you.
When we talk about technology, we tend to think about the sophisticated innovations and we forget the basic form of it. A simple WhatsApp message led me here. I saw an opportunity on the platform, applied for it and gained skills on how to leverage social media for advocacy. I slowly built my brand on LinkedIn and I got recommended for my first and second current job. Right now, under the We Can Work program, I also guide the young community and social media influencers on how to use social media for social behavioral change communications. On the technologically advanced side, I work with persons with diverse disabilities, and initially, I couldn't make a connection with colleagues who were visually impaired, but thanks to my artificially intelligent text-to-speech app, I am now able to do so. I am also able to sit on such panels confidently, as it's hard for me to sign and at the same time control the drool.
Great. Thank you so much, Marianne, for getting us started. More importantly, for showcasing already how technology is helping you communicate and express yourself. So I'm going to go on to Sarah. The same question. How are you using technology every day to get things done, move around as a person with visual impairment?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to use my experience and the experience of other persons with visual impairments that I know. So technology has really helped me, especially in the aspects of education. Just look at it this way, like me as a young girl who was diagnosed with an irreversible genetic eye condition, I thought that my dreams of going to school was shattered. But that was the light of hope when someone told me that you can use technology and go back to school again. So that's how I went for rehabilitation at the Ghana Blind Union, the Assistive Tech Lab, where I was taught how to use the screen reader. I was taught how to use the keyboard, how to memorize keyboard shortcuts, and also train my ears to be able to understand what my screen reader is saying. And the plus to all of this is that I was even told that even my smartphone can also do the same thing. So I use the accessibility feature on my smartphone, and that's voice over. It's also a screen reader that helps me do basic things like phone calls, reading materials, even on my phone, even on my laptop. I use this screen reader for my schoolwork. I use it for assignments. I use it for exams. I use it for basically everything. And in the aspect of employment, my friends with visual impairments who were used to the Braille also leveraged on technology and learned Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, and advanced IT, and it helped them get employment. Most of them I know today are employed and they are living an independent life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Certainly, with technology, it's easier for persons, especially young people with disabilities, to access education and job opportunities, just as she has just demonstrated through her story. And thank you for sharing. So we'll come to you, Joyce. Same question. How are you using technology every day to get things done and do things?
All right. Personally, I rely on technology on a day-to-day basis. First, I rely on noise-canceling headphones to just ensure that I remain productive, and especially in places where there's a lot of distractions. They enable me to concentrate and be able to focus on my work. Of course, I also have multiple applications that enable me to enhance or rather to support my memory. Like, trackers. I have apps that are reminders that just ensure that I can track my thoughts and even my work, at the same time ensuring my privacy. I know there are certain apps that most people would have them on their phones just like any other app, but for someone like me, they are a life changer. I am thinking about an app like my calendar. I know the ladies understand what I'm talking about. This is a simple app that most of us would use it to track, when are we expecting the next period. But for someone like me, it reminds me every day that, you're still on this and you need to take care of yourself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that's important because the technology that some other people use for everyday things casually becomes powerful tools that then help people get, especially young persons with disabilities, get things done. Things as simple as noise cancelling headset that you use for just music, perhaps, is, someone else is depending on them to get their work done. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll come to you, Christy.
Thank you so much, Olushola. So for me, assistive technology has been, I should say, a game changer. I shared in my introduction that I injured my spine when I was around 11 years old. And when the doctor told me that I will not be able to walk again, the first thing that came into my mind was, okay, so this means I will not be able to go back to school to continue my studies. I will not be able to work. Maybe possibly I'll just be begging, just like any other persons with disabilities that I grew seeing begging on the streets. But when I was offered a wheelchair as my assistive technology, and they trained me on how to use this wheelchair, I was able to perform my day-to-day activities. I was able to go back to school, attend classes, and when I finished my studies, time for me to look for a job came. However, I found out that most of the interview places that I went to were wheelchair inaccessible. And also, public transport in Malawi is inaccessible for wheelchair users. So that meant that I should be hiring taxis, which are quite expensive. And then the use of technology to me has really changed my life, because currently I'm working with an organization called the Disability Rights Fund, and I'm working remotely at home using technology. I'm now able to support my family, provide for my family. So technology, I think, is something that young persons with disabilities cannot do without. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Someone has said that with technology for persons without disabilities is just to make things easier. But for people with disabilities, it's indeed make things possible. And that's the story that you have shared. And just to add a bit of context, across the African continent, it is estimated that over 200 million people need one form of assistive technology or the other. But of those numbers, less than 10% actually has access to them. And those are numbers that show that we should be concerned about, because, when we have a huge population of persons with disabilities who need to get things done, how are they navigating that? So building on that, I'm going to come to you, Sarah. And after Sarah, I'll come to you, Miriam. Sarah, how are you using technology to promote independence for yourself? Because the truth also is, Joyce mentioned the need for privacy the other time. As much as you want to get things done, especially for a person with visual impairment, you sometimes have to rely on other people, right? But how are you leveraging technology to reduce or maybe eliminate that dependency and still have your privacy as you get things done?
All right, thank you for that question. So back home in Ghana, when they see a person with visual impairment, they just see someone who is solely dependent to do everything, basically like everything. So I am an independent individual right from birth, even when I was not a person without disability. And I told myself that I will not allow my disability to make me overly dependent on people, because there are times where these people have their lives to live and they can't be at your beck and call all the time. You need to be independent. So I decided to leverage on every technology that can make my life easier, that can make my life independent. So in terms of school, I use screen readers to write online exams. I use screen readers to do anything to school. And when you come to my social life too, I use my phone, which has an accessibility feature, to connect with my friends, to go places using ride-hailing apps, to even order food, because there are certain places where it's not accessible for a person with visual impairment to move to that place. So technology basically helps me. I use third-party technology apps to describe images. I don't need anyone to describe an image to me. Sometimes an email might come and it's a flyer. You need to respond immediately. Thanks to technology, I'm able to do all of these things. So I take every technology that is available to me to live an independent life, because do not allow the misconceptions about your disability be true. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, especially how you're using technology to promote independency for yourself. So speaking about this technology, Miriam, you're an innovator, and we're happy to hear from your perspective, what are some of these innovative, exciting technologies that are being developed here on the continent? Maybe, share some of the examples of the ones you've worked on, and, what are those exciting technologies?
I have personally been in different innovation incubation programs like Innovate Now, and there are amazing innovations in the making from all over Africa. I have personally been in different innovation incubation programs like Innovate Now, and there are amazing innovations in the making from all over Africa. Our innovation, SKIO, came into being after a fire incident in a hostel which hosted us and other deaf students. Even though there were fire alerts, the deaf were oblivious of the fire. My team and I are building an AI solution that will enhance the safety of the deaf in such instances. The other day, a driver with a cab service company called me an illegal arms dealer simply because I requested him not to call me but to text instead. Innovations like ACE Mobility are changing this. ACE Mobility offers cab services tailored to diverse disabilities. The cars have ramps, drivers who understand sign language, and they go the extra mile to ensure the client is well settled without extra charges. Today many T-shirts will be distributed to celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, but will they be inclusive to the visually impaired? Hissy Studio produces adaptive clothing for the visually impaired. We have Ashera, an AI-powered plugin which translates text and online content into Kenya Sign Language (KSL) using human-based interpretation. There are prosthetics limbs. We have different augmentative and alternative communication devices and apps. We have the Ambitech canes and white canes that have ultrasonic and GPS features. The list is endless.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for sharing some of the innovations you've worked on and the others. The good thing, and I think one of the most exciting things for me, is young people, youth with disabilities in Africa are not just on the receiving end of technology. They are also innovators. They are also strengthening that ecosystem and willing to participate, right? So speaking about that, Joyce, coming to you, how do we ensure that these technologies, including those designed here on the continent, they have young youth with disabilities at the middle of them? They are designed to be inclusive and, just made for persons with disabilities on the continent.
We know that mostly young people, and I hear this a lot, we do not have capital, we do not have the funds, and I feel this is where government investors, CSOs, would come up maybe with programs. Like Marianne is saying, Innovate Now is a good program that enables young people to bring the innovations and to showcase what they can do. Then we need to find funding for them to be able to access resources that will enable them to bring the innovations and even get into the market of assistive technology. Because again, we say the market is big and the imbalance in supply and demand. But then we also need to understand what are the needs that are there for these young people to be able then to make products that are actually needed by persons with disabilities. The other thing is mostly I feel the government should try to localize production by making either information accessible, ensuring that young people have access to materials that they can use, and also ensuring sustainability in these projects. And lastly, of course, let's also engage them during the design, during the implementation, ensure that they are heard and they are at the center of what is being created. Thank you.
Thank you. Young persons with disabilities must be at the center of that entire creation pipeline, from conceptualization to production to testing, and of course, beyond that. That's very important message that Joyce highlighted. So coming to you, Christy, let's talk a little bit about the barriers, right? Joyce was just talking about how to make sure the voices of young people are, in the center. But we know, just like I said earlier, that a lot of young people are still unable to access technology, especially assistive technology. And that is a big deal. What are the barriers?
Okay, thank you so much, Olushola, for that question. So I'm just going to buttress the points that Joyce has made. So there are so many barriers that young people with disabilities face in accessing these assistive technologies, which really changes their lives. So for example, back home in Malawi, when I wanted to get my wheelchair, I couldn't find a wheelchair that is custom made to my needs, because an assistive technology is not just like any other wheelchair. Because, for example, I'm using a wheelchair, some people just think, oh, why not just go and get another wheelchair from the hospital? It has to be custom fitted, depending on my accessibility needs. I have a spinal injury. I'm prone to developing pressure sores. So if they give me a wheelchair that is not working perfectly for me, it will worsen my disability. It will make me develop pressure sores, which then becomes life-threatening. So most of these assistive technologies are not locally available in most African countries. I know South Africa is an exception because I got my wheelchair from South Africa. So imagine the young people that are living in rural areas where they don't have access to public transport, which is accessible to them. They don't have access to these assistive technologies. So that means they will not be able to access these and then access education and access even employment. And also, as I've said, that I accessed my wheelchair in South Africa, it came with a lot of cost because I had to import it from South Africa. I had to go there also for the fitting and all that, which even increased the cost. So so imagine for an average family that has a member with a disability and they need to access this. These assistive technologies are very, very expensive. So the point that I'm trying to buttress is that governments need to make sure that these assistive technologies are locally available and also locally manufactured, so that they remove these barriers that poses challenges for young persons with disabilities to be able to access. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You've spoken extensively about the issue of affordability, which is a big deal. Especially given the fact that in most cases, persons with disabilities tend to live below the poverty line, right? And when these tools are then manufactured, especially overseas, outside the continent, we have to deal with importation, the actual cost of manufacturing, and then there is another layer of poverty that young persons with disabilities have to deal with, and it's complex in a way, because you need this assistive technology to be productive, right? But then you need to be productive to make money to buy these assistive technologies. So it's like the chicken and the egg situation, where sometimes you don't even know where to start from, right? So talking about solutions, and I'm coming back to you, Sarah, from a solution perspective, how do you think young people with disabilities can play in that sector of supporting the development of cost-effective or accessible technology?
All right, thank you. So I'm going to start with the government in a way. So I believe that there should be policies that are put in place. And in drafting these policies, persons with disabilities should be involved because they know their needs and they know how they want it to be. And these policies should not just be on paper. it should come with sanctions. It should come with some kind of it should be laid out in a way where the web developers and then the software application builders will follow. Because back home in Ghana, I'm using Ghana again as an example, but I love my homeland. So back home in Ghana, most of the locally made applications and locally built websites are not accessible at all with screen reader users. But if there are policies in place and these policies comes with sanctions, I believe that these apps and these websites are going to be more accessible, because most of the websites are not even accessible to the point that even the normal USSD has a little bit of, the timeout is just short in a few seconds. So if you're a person with visual impairments and you're using your screen reader to make transactions, it just times you out. You would need a third party to do these transactions for you, and financially it's not safe because your security code will be known by that person. And also, when building these applications or when developing these websites, you should bring persons with disability on board. Again, they are the ones who know what they need. So they are the ones who would tell you, because the mainstream app is just for persons without disability. So you are a person without disability and you know what to do. But then if you bring the person with disability on board, the person with disability will tell you, let's do it this way. So it starts from the beginning of the building of the website to the testing stage before it even goes out there. And also, IT schools should allow persons with visual impairment to be able to learn how to code. Because I know friends that have visual impairments, were not accepted in the IT space. So they had to learn coding on their own. And they can do it perfectly well. So if these schools have open arms and they make these schools inclusive, I believe that everything is going to go fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, a lot of things to unpack there, from challenging our own stereotypes and what we think is possible, right? When you talk about coding and programming, many of us seem to just rush to exclude persons with visual impairment or persons with other form of disabilities. But we now have people with disabilities learning these skills by themselves, not even having anyone teaching them, and they are good, and they are doing these things well. And then that then becomes strategic in ensuring that the products that we are getting out there are inclusive. Because when a person with disability is building a product, it's extremely likely that the product will be disability compliant, right? So it's not just enough that we have all of these ideas. It's also important that we enable persons, especially young people with disabilities, to also be able to express themselves, build products, and building on that. I'm coming back to you, Marian, as an innovator, right? Would you like to share what are some of these new technologies that you have seen that are coming out, either from within the continent or globally, that young persons with disabilities can leverage on, that you are already leveraging on?
For long we have had internet inaccessibility in the rural areas in Kenya, but Starlink is likely to change this. Even though it's expensive, it may create a competitive market and other competitors will consider making internet accessible in the rural areas. Artificial intelligence is another trend that we can't really predict its potential, though we know it's revolutionizing the technology space. For instance, there are AI innovations which can be able to learn the educational needs of persons with intellectual, psychosocial and other learning needs and be able to adapt to their needs. It will no longer be learners with disabilities being forced to adapt to the educational system, but the system being tailored to accommodate their unique learning needs. With robotics and automation, we have 3D printed prosthetic limbs. The limbs can easily be customized to the user's specific needs and it can be done as fast. The other day I saw a university student, from Ghana, or was it Nigeria? He built a robot that assists persons without limbs to be independent. We also have Elon Musk's blind sight that could restore vision to persons with visual impairment.
Thank you. Thank you. Definitely the emergence of the AI technology, robotics, machine learning, cloud computing, all of these things are solving real problems. And I think part of the conversation we should start having now is how do we ensure that young persons with disabilities are also moving as fast as possible in learning this technology so that we're not on the receiving end of, these technologies only, but driving and using them actively to create a product that will serve young people with disabilities. So let's take the conversation a bit further, and I'm coming to you again, Joyce, to talk about different stakeholders. You started to talk about government the other time, but from government to private sectors, private sector actors, and others. What do you think are their roles in making sure that accessing technology is better for young people with disabilities?
Thank you. So we say the government's role is mostly to create an enabling environment for investors and even for youth with disabilities to be able to innovate and to also, invest in this market, right? Because again, if we do not support the young people, or if the market is not suitable for me, then why should I even venture into it, right? So again, we have the private sector, and we need them to also invest in this, because as much as we want to, keep importing products, the cost of it goes higher. If they could invest in the local talents that we have, and we know we already have them, then this means that we can make products that are more affordable, more accessible, and that are adapted to the needs of persons with disabilities. CSOs, they have a mandate to support they can develop programs for youth with disabilities to be able to innovate or to bring their ideas to life, and also support in advocacy and in sharing information. Because the other barrier that youth with disabilities face is lack of awareness of these existing technologies. Where do we find them? How do we access them? And even how do we use them? So then, working in partnership, I feel like most importantly is that all these partners work together in collaboration to support either, and I'm just thinking if we could even have collective funds that could support, because again, we over-depend on the government to provide funding. So then if they could all work together to support such initiatives, I feel like we could make great steps ahead. The other thing, of course, organizations of persons with disabilities have a responsibility to first identify these talents and also, amplify them and make them seen. Because again, most young persons with disabilities are left out in many initiatives. We have thousands of initiatives on youth around, I think in Africa and even in Kenya. But youth with disabilities are left out because they are not considered as, youth like any other youth. But we need initiatives that support specifically youth with disabilities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm coming to you, Christy, to build on that. And while answering, also consider the role of donors, international donors, local donors, in that mix. The government, the private sector, the innovators, the civil society organization. What do you think the role they can play? What are those roles?
Okay, so just to add on what Joyce has said, so governments, CSOs, tech companies, organizations of persons with disabilities, they also do have that greater role that they need to to play in making sure that assistive technologies or technology solutions are created to the needs of young persons with disabilities. So first of all, just as what Joyce has already said, governments need to develop policies and regulations that are setting the standards for accessibility, because most technological solutions are not following these accessibility standards, just as Sarah has already said. And if there are no accessibility standards, it means everyone will just be developing products that are not even in line with the accessibility standards. And organizations of persons with disabilities need to make sure that the policies that are being developed are reflecting the needs and the voices of young persons with disabilities. This can only be done if young persons with disabilities get to understand the process of policy formulation. The process is brought closer to them, because most of the young persons with disabilities live in the rural areas. So for them to go to where government is possibly maybe making consultations for the development of these policies, it becomes a challenge. So what if the process is brought closer to them? And do these youth with disabilities understand what it means when the government is developing the policies? What is their role? Is the language easy for them to understand? So I think all those things need to be taken into consideration when the government is developing these policies and regulations. And secondly, I would like to talk about research and needs assessment. So as I said, as tech companies are coming up with these technological solutions, they need to understand that persons with disabilities are not a homogeneous group. They have different needs. So they need to make sure that they need to do research and take into consideration the needs of all these young persons and also persons with disabilities in general. And funding and resources is always a huge problem. So I think if donors, development partners can prioritize in investing for the development of assistive technologies locally, we help to bring down the cost of accessing these assistive technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful thoughts and experiences around accessing assistive technology and technology in general for youth with disabilities. At this point, I'm going to ask if we have questions from the audience, from the live participants. Okay. All right. So while we wait for those questions to come, I'm going to come back to Sarah. And I mean, we've highlighted issues like availability, and Marianne spoke a lot about available technology, being an innovator herself. We've also talked about the awareness, and Christy, you've talked about, do people know this technology, especially those in further marginalized communities, like rural communities, and so on and so forth. We've talked about ability to use. Joyce, you mentioned that, because it's not just enough to know that this technology exists. It's also important that people know how to use. Affordability is also a big, question. How are we able to afford this? How are we even producing these things? But there's also the part about the attitude, of the community of persons with disabilities themselves. And I'm coming to you, Sarah, to ask about what are your thoughts about ensuring that youth with disabilities understand how much technology can do for them, right? And our position to leverage it.
Okay, thank you. So, talking about attitude, there are cases where persons with visual impairments have been encouraged to use the screen reader software, and they're like, no, I don't want to use the screen reader software. I prefer the Braille. The Braille is faster. But when we are sitting in the exams hall, I am using the computer and my friend is using the Braille. I end up finishing way before she does, and the Braille is very bulky, and she would need a transcriber who sometimes does not transcribe her text well, and it ends up affecting her grades. So I believe that there's a way to encourage these persons with disability to change their attitude. Maybe the approach that is being used to encourage them to use these technologies is not the right approach. So I believe that when you learn the right approach on how to encourage the person with disability, and also training, because there's one thing to have the technology and there's also another thing to be trained to use this. And then even when you come to these are rural communities, personally, change is a bit difficult. So there's a way, you do it step by step. You don't just up and say, you need to, no. There is a way, you take it step by step. And I believe that eventually the person with disability will change their attitudes towards technology. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. The place of attitude, how people think about technology is extremely important because it could be a barrier in itself, even if all other things are resolved. I have two more questions. I'm directing one to Marian. And Marian, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about your perspective as an innovator, right? Not just as a user, but as an innovator. What more can be done to support innovation, yes, in the AT space? Right, so I'm going to come back to you to respond to that question. But then I'm coming to Joyce, basically just talking about the role of communities and not necessarily governments now. The role of a group or community of persons with disabilities coming together. What impact does that have in how individuals with disabilities access assistive technology in our collectiveness? Okay, so I'm asking about our ability to come together. You work with UKDP.
UDPK.
Sorry, UDPK. What impact does that community have in ensuring that more persons with disability have access to technology, right?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, let me first mention, at UDPK, we developed an information toolkit on assistive technology, talking about what technologies we have and how people can access those technologies, because this was identified as a gap. Most people, and especially when you think of people in the rural areas and other settlements, they're not even aware that we have assistive technologies that can support them, be productive or live independently. So we brought together organizations of persons with disabilities, and they were able to contribute to these toolkits. And you see, these are persons with disabilities themselves, and they are able to identify these are the needs first, before even the toolkit was developed. What are the needs that are there? So then they said, we do not know if these things exist. We do not know how to get them, even if we know they exist. And then during the development of the toolkit, they were brought again together, and together we developed the toolkit to see how even persons in the rural parts of Kenya can actually read this and understand that, oh, yes, we do have this, and I can actually get it, and this is how I can get it. Finally, as youth with disabilities, and I want to actually, send this message to youth with disabilities, that we have a role to play in ensuring we live in the digital world where we can access information very fast, and it's our duty to go find that information. And I feel if we can all come together, build a strong movement where we are able to share information with each other, then that would push us ahead in ensuring that we are all growing together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's definitely important that we can come together to find ways to solve our own problems together. Marian?
First, we need to ensure that as persons with disabilities, we also become innovative. We also have ideas to offer. We are the ones who face the barriers and understand them better. So, we are better placed to develop the solutions. Persons with disabilities should also be involved in the different processes of such technology, and they should be engaged right from the beginning. With existing technologies that are not accessible, persons with disabilities can share their feedback to the brands or developers to enhance accessibility. Developers should also adhere to the web content accessibility guidelines to enhance the user experience. In other continents like Australia, if products and services are not accessible, they are not allowed to get into the market. If we get to a point where our policies have such provisions that are implemented, it will be a different discussion. The other day, there was this hackathon in Rwanda organized by this big company. I went there, and out of the 80 participants, I think I was the only person with disability. Of course, there are invisible disabilities, but even in the application form, there was no way one could state whether they have a disability or state if they would need reasonable accommodations. Such initiatives are good, and I was grateful for the opportunity, but they need to involve persons with disabilities more and do so deliberately.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. As we begin to round up the panel, I'm going to come to Christy. Just before the panel, you and I were having conversation around data, which I think is also very, important, especially as we understand the market. Where are the needs? What should we do? Do you want to talk a little bit more about the need for disability-driven data in all of this conversation?
Thank you so much, Olushola. So the discussion around collection of disability inclusive data is very, very important, because if we talk of advocacy for the provision of different services for persons with disabilities, we need first of all to understand how many youth with disabilities do we have in Malawi, for example? How many youth with disabilities are of school-going age? Maybe how many youth with disabilities are visually impaired? So even for the government, as they'll be coming up with service provisions, for example, in the areas of access to education, in the areas of employment, political participation, we need to make sure that we have disability disaggregated data, without which I think it would be very, very difficult for governments to be able to formulate programs that are specifically targeting persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, every one of you, for your contributions to enrich this conversation, to highlight some of the barriers and challenges, but also to provide solutions to these things. I'm going to come to every one of you to give your closing remarks, action points. What are you leaving every one of us with as we go? And we'll start with you, Sarah.
All right, thank you. So what I have for you out there is, there's this saying that says that when life throws lemons at you, make lemonades out of them. You are a person with disability. Technology is now at your beck and call. Leverage upon it. Use it as much as you can, and make your life very, very independent. Again, do not let the misconceptions about you be true. Thank you.
Do not let the misconceptions about you be true. Thank you for those words. Miriam, your closing words.
Before that, allow me to add, for more information on assistive technology, visit Enable Me Kenya website. Okay, my parting short is, the conversation should not stop here. We should be practical about it and do our part. Also, please follow me on LinkedIn at Mariana Momeri.
Thank you. That is great. Well, thank you for saying that. So follow all of us. Start with Miriam, though. All right, so we'll come to Joyce.
My parting shot is to the developers and innovators. As we move towards the digital spaces and enhancing technology, let's ensure that accessibility and youth with disabilities are at the center of it by embracing universal design, which caters for everyone, and ensuring that no one is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you. No one should be left behind. After all, that's the biggest promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. Over to you, Christy.
Thank you, Olushola. So I think we've all learned from the panel discussion that assistive technology, assistive devices has that capability of transforming the lives of persons with disabilities, not only youth with disabilities. So my call goes to African governments that they need to prioritize investing in the development of assistive technologies locally so they can be available to everyone in their localities. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all my panelists, talented panelists, from the innovator to the student and the development practitioners working to drive disability inclusion, especially through technology. To put all of our conversation in summary, I think we can all go with the following points. Technology is a catalyst for empowerment, especially for persons with disabilities. The reality is, for many of our immediate built environment, accessibility is still a long shot. But with technology, we can leverage technology to go to school, to go to do work, to get things done and be empowered. So that's important. More specifically, assistive technology is key to accessing mainstream technology. And don't forget that what is a basic technology to you, what you just do or use at your leisure time, is an important technology to another person for survival, for accessing education, for working, for staying alive. So let's bear that in mind as we go around. And let's remember that youth with disabilities are not only on the receiving end. They are not just there as users. They are also innovators, talented, as you've seen on this panel, beautiful ideas they have. And the best thing we can do as private sector government is to engage them, to put them at the middle of that conversation and allow them, enable them to drive the innovation around assistive technology. And finally, collaboration is the way forward. There is no single sector, not just the government, not just the private sector, not just the development partners. Everyone has to come together, including young persons with disabilities. We all have to come together to make the change that we want to happen. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. Let's keep the conversation going, like Marianne said, and certainly we can make change happen across our continent. Thank you.